lot more people follow Elon Musk than follow Tesla. That's part of the CEO's role, is to kind of be out there as the face of the company.
Just share valuable information about the industry. You give value, hopefully you get value.
So much of the social content of influencers, a lot of them basically built their following pretending to have a lifestyle that they don't have. And then you have all these CEOs who are actually living the lifestyle that those influencers were trying to paint a picture of, and they're not sharing it.
Corporate profile for LinkedIn, you can only attract followers. You can't get...
All right, hey, this is John Newtson, CEO of Pendry Cannon, and I'm excited today to be joined by Seth Farbman, who is the CEO of V-Stock Transfer, who also has an enormous amount of experience with LinkedIn marketing in particular. So Seth, thanks for being here. I appreciate you coming in here talking about shareholder acquisition.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So just kind of as a background, you obviously, as a transfer agent, I mean, you have what, like 800 plus clients. You've worked with thousands of companies. You've built companies yourself and exited them. I would love to get your take on kind of framing just like issue of shareholder acquisition today in kind of the digital environment that we're at, and how important digital marketing, whether it's the content creation, content marketing, paid marketing, like where would you kind of place that the importance and role of digital content and marketing in the realm of shareholder acquisition?
So that's like a lot of questions wrapped up in one. So I'll try to unpack it a little bit at a time. But yeah, I mean, it's funny because I've been working in one form or another with publicly traded companies, or pre-IPO to public, for about 20 years. And at the end of the day, they never really want to speak to me about what I do, whether it's, transfer agent or Edgar filings and things like that. They all have the core goal of, access to capital and IR and PR and telling their story. And I think that over the years, it's transitioned to the point where you can't just put out a press release anymore and hope somebody reads it. It's that's what it used to be. And I'd probably say around 5, 6, 7 years ago, I think people started to recognize that, you put out a press release and it's just crickets. And now it's really just one slice of a very large pie of what needs to be done, whether it's, road shows and SEO and as you're saying, digital marketing, because we live in a very visual world. So that's sort of point number one, where you've got to get something and do something to stop the scrolling, right? So we want to just be able to, like, what's that? And let me read this because I've seen that visual. So that's something that's important, as simple as it sounds. And then I think also digital allows you to hit them often and frequently, as opposed to that once every couple of weeks or couple months press release. So I think digital is now a very important role in the life of any storytelling that a company does.
Right, and that's that grabbing the attention piece. I think that's one of the problems with kind of the press releases sometimes, is that it doesn't always grab attention in that old model. Communication strategies to change. And all digital marketing is essentially an arbitrage of attention. You're trying to grab that attention and focus it on some kind of an action. I always think of the audiences that when I talk digital marketing to people, they tend to assume that we're only talking retail audiences, which there's enormous opportunities and access to retail audiences, but there's also professional investors, and there's the whole ecosystem of potential shareholders that's out there. Is engaged online. So how do you think that people should be thinking about that in general, in particular in relation to kind of some of the LinkedIn stuff that you've been doing?
Yeah, it's funny because I think that historically the way that a CEO or management team had hoped to get in front of the right audience was to go to a conference. And they would budget accordingly to go to 3 or 4 conferences a year. They would have those one-on-one meetings with some of the family offices, the investment bankers, the institutions, and they would hope that outcome would give them the relationships that they need. But in today's day and age, if you can market accordingly with social, you're really spreading that net extremely wide, and again, extremely often. And so the analogy that I give to a lot of the CEOs is, and today's discussion, John, can definitely focus on LinkedIn because I think that that's my core, but it's really social and digital marketing as a whole. The analogy that I give is, imagine that you're giving a TED Talks 5 days a week, and you've got an auditorium of 5,000 people, and just make a checklist of who do you wish you could be speaking to, and who would you like to invite to that party. So you've got 5,000 seats to fill. Do you want to fill that with chief investment officers, family offices, funds? And the beauty of LinkedIn is that you can even drill down with specificity, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm in biotech, pharma, med tech, electric vehicles, esports, I can really invite an audience that cares about the topic and the category, and appreciate what I want to talk about. So I think that's something that companies really can focus on when they want to get in front of the right audience, is leveraging social and digital marketing to actually get in front of the right audience, and tell their story to people that will care.
Yeah, so like the targeting opportunity is enormous, like you said, that you can find people who are already invested and interested in your sector. You can find influencers in your sector. You can find all kinds of folks who are very much interested in what you do, rather than just kind of putting out a generic or a general press release and hoping that the right people will pick it up. I mean, you can even target journalists, you can target publishers and editors. The ability to find the right people for a particular company today is, I think, better than it's ever been.
Absolutely.
For sure. So what do you find are like the most effective things that people do in terms of, like, once they start actually trying to reach people? There's the whole issue of what kind of messaging do you do, what kind of conversations do you have, what are the kinds of things, if you are going to talk to people on an ongoing basis, like what is it that moves the needle, I guess, for folks?
Yeah, I mean, so I think that the world we live in, people care most about authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody, I can only speak for myself, you'd probably agree, nobody ever really wants to come across as salesy or as cheesy or as self-promotional. I don't think anybody wakes up trying to come off that way. So if you're a company, let's just say you're a biotech company, you may not have information about your company that often to share. So great, you've got an amazing press release in January, and then you've got something else to announce 6 months later. But what do you do how do you engage your audience for those 6 months in between? So there are ways to be authentic. I'd probably break it down into two categories. The first is to just share valuable information about the industry. So you can take articles that your newfound connections would just appreciate. Nothing to do about you, nothing to do about your company per se, but if we'll use me as an example. If I'm constantly posting information about IPOs, about capital markets, about NASDAQ rules, SEC regulations, that has nothing to do with VStock. But at the end of the day, people appreciate that I'm providing them with industry knowledge or industry events. And, as a byproduct of that, I get extra branding. And
Right.
so anybody can do that with providing content,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily written by themselves, but content. It takes time and effort and digging and research, but they've got to find good content that they can provide value. And if you give value, hopefully you get value. I think the second category when we speak about authenticity is if you're the CEO of a company, people kind of want to know a little bit about you and about the company, what's under the hood. So, what type of meetings are you going to? What type of conferences are you going to? Not just about the successes of the company and the press releases that announce the mega deals, but if you're able to, what didn't work? And those things, if you're able to post about them, make you more real and relatable. And I think that, again, still gives you visibility, so that in between those formal press releases, if you've got 5,000-10,000 connections and you're posting twice a week, you're getting tens of thousands of eyeballs on your symbol, on your company name, on your branding. And I think that's slowly but surely, organically effective marketing.
Yeah. So kind of that piece of authenticity then is you're talking about, one, just that there's always, especially from an investor standpoint, there's a lot of information that somebody who's inside the industry is going to probably understand or have a context for, that might be at a greater degree than somebody who's outside the industry, even if they're an investor in that industry. And so sharing that kind of useful information, contextualizing things, giving people something to think about in terms of that is really valuable. And then I love what you're saying about the looking under the hood of the CEO and kind of just being there, showing people, documenting kind of you doing the business, what it is that you do. And I know that that was one of those things that probably one of the greatest influencers prior to like Mr. Beast, Gary V did.
Right.
I mean, he basically he was like, I'm not putting out content, I'm documenting what I'm doing, and showing that I'm actually doing things. And that in and of itself is interesting. It's branding, it's getting people engaged with him, and kind of starting, not only that, I think it actually, like, when you do what you're talking about, when people start to go on that journey with you, and then they start to root for you.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a great point. And you also, it's funny that you mentioned Gary V, because he says something that I saw was so true with some of the CEOs that I interact with. Very often the challenge is people want to do this. They want to do the messaging, but they just feel like, well, my life is boring. I've got nothing going on, so therefore I have no content. So I was talking to this CEO, and I said, listen, I said, John, what are you doing next week? Let's just use that as an example. So he says, well, I've got a board meeting. I was like, okay, where's the board meeting? He's like, oh, actually, I could probably come up with something. The board meeting is in Switzerland. I was like, okay, that's exciting. We're in Switzerland. He's like, well, one of my board members has a villa in the Swiss Alps, and we're all meeting there for like wine tasting and cheese, and then we're gonna have the board meeting. I was like, John, just take a picture in the Swiss Alps at the villa with your board, and I promise you will have content to talk about your board meeting that's quasi related to business. And the irony is that I spoke to him like 2-3 weeks later. I'm like, John, I never saw you post about that board meeting. He's like, oh, I forgot to take a picture. Like, it really takes a training of the mind and a certain thinking to think like a marketer, even though you're running a business and trying to get the word out.
Yeah, no, and that sounds like, yeah, what a wonderfully missed opportunity, because it does seem
Right.
like there's so many things that could have been posted around that are so engaging. And I think that's one of the things that I think a lot of people miss too, is that so much of the social content of influencers, it's ironic because a lot of them basically built their following pretending to have a lifestyle that they don't have. And then you have all these CEOs who are actually living the lifestyle that those influencers were trying to paint a picture of, and they're not sharing it because it's a different mentality. I don't know, maybe it's a generational thing as well, of like, I don't want to put myself out there and act like I'm a big deal and this and that, and so trying to navigate that kind of personal like dynamic of like, I don't want to seem like a jerk, or but at the same time, like actually using that kind of lifestyle that you have and displaying it in relevant situations could have a really great impact on
Yeah, I
social.
think when it comes to shareholders, they respect the CEOs that we've had. I've had the good fortune to be at a couple of NASDAQ bell ringings over the years, and you've got some CEOs that will literally tear up at the exchange and really just thank their teams and thank their members and come clean with, how difficult that roadmap had been, and the challenges of raising money till then, and the 99 no's that they got until that one banker committed to the 75 or 100 million. I think shareholders appreciate that and make make that company and the CEO more relatable. They appreciate the journey.
Yeah.
I think that's important for people to get out there in their storytelling.
Yeah, it's that it's such a dramatic process. There's so much drama going on behind the scenes. There's the story of the company, but then there's a story of like kind of building the company. There's a story of the money and how what you need and what you're going to use it for and how you get it. And it's a struggle often, and people love to. It's not even that they love. It's like you naturally engage with that. It's almost like it slips under the radar of kind of, if someone's trying to sell you on how great we are, everyone puts their wall up. But if somebody's sharing like that emotional moment of,
Sure,
because I had that, I had the I was fortunate enough to be at the one NYSE bell ringing. And I remember the CEO's up there in the back in the boardroom ahead of time, and he did exactly what you said. He was like, I grew up here in New York, like this is a dream come true to be able to ring the bell, right? And like he's tearing up and like choking up, and it was a beautiful moment. And I felt like even just being able to witness that like in person, I felt like it's like, man, what an honor to have to be able to see a friend live out his dream in person. Like that's amazing. And it's this great story. But and that kind of also brings up another point on marketing then. So when you talk about like marketing for a company, there's the company and then there's the people. And so who's the marketing and content? Like there's what the company puts out, and then there's kind of what the the CEO and the founder and the team itself is putting out. Do you see like they should have? It's a
good distinction. Yeah, no, that's actually a really good distinction. I get that question asked frequently, and I think that I do think you need both, but in other words, there's a mechanical distinction, and then I think there's the perception between the two of them. The mechanical distinction is that on a corporate, let's just focus on the LinkedIn side. On a corporate LinkedIn page, I feel like it's more informative. Like you've got to have a corporate profile because people will check it out. And if it's not there, people will think that something's wrong or it's lacking. But on the corporate profile for LinkedIn, you can only attract followers. You can't get connections. It's a small distinction, but it's important because the followers that you're going to be attracting are generic, right? It could be, John from Idaho who runs a pizza company. It could be Jane who runs an insurance firm. You can't target them. Whereas on a personal profile, you're targeting specific connections. So you can target healthcare investor. You can target esports analyst. So if your focus is on building that TED Talks room, you want to be doing it on a personal profile where you can get a very, very curated audience. So I always encourage, companies that I speak to do both. But you definitely should have them going on simultaneously. You can certainly share information between the two of them. And I also have certainly come across that type of CEO that says, no, I want to stay under the radar. I don't even want to have a profile. I want it to just be all about the company. And I respect that. That's certainly a personal decision. I find that to be a bit of a challenge, though, because people want to know, I want to know the face of the company. I want to know who's behind the curtain of Oz, right? And people want to do business with people. And they want to engage and message with that person. So if there is a CEO that says, I don't want anybody to know who I am, I don't know if that's like the best role for a CEO of a publicly traded company.
Yeah, it's kind of like a lot more people follow Elon Musk than follow Tesla.
Right. Exactly. So that's a good analogy. Yeah.
It's I mean, you're right. I think that's part of the CEO's role is to kind of be out there as the face of the company and be out there.
And to your point in terms of the shareholder component of it, whether it's the institutional side or whatnot, very often if you're leveraging the platform the right way, or any social or any digital media for that matter, if you're storytelling correctly, the ultimate goal is to take that relationship offline and then build from there. So on the personal side, you'll get messages coming in from shareholders or funds or bankers and saying, hey, I noticed your last post. I noticed your last press release. I liked your last conference. Can we set up a call? That's a forum for direct interaction with these shareholders, which isn't necessarily going to be found on the corporate profile side.
Mm-hmm.
So that messaging component on the personal side, I think, is just another way of that shareholder engagement component.
Right. And so when you do target, like, how, if we were going to drill down on that targeting issue, then like you're going to try and build your perfect room. Let's say you were, maybe you're a direct to consumer e-com kind of company. How would you look at, like, I would think that there's, a even not, I don't even say sophisticated, just a thought out and well reasoned strategy then would be kind of starting to stack types of people, whether it's known investors in that sector, analysts who cover that sector, journalists who cover that sector, publishers, influencers in that sector on the product side, who I think that's a whole other area that you can kind of, with the same effort, almost start to interact with, are people who have audience for the product itself, not just the investors. And so do you think about like targeting those groups with like creating different content sets for those groups? Do you kind of just try and get everybody engaged, and you kind of have one content stream that's kind of at different times featuring other ones, or messages for different groups, or like, how would you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends, again, if somebody is doing it themselves, if they're outsourcing it, if they're utilizing a firm, depending on the size of their budget, right? It's going to be extremely customized depending on what their goals are. But yeah, I mean, if you're doing it yourself, you're probably just going to have one size fits all, just to accommodate everybody that's going to be viewing it. You may be a CEO of a company that has multiple products or different divisions that have, we were working with one company that was in the neuro brain space, but at the same time, they were touching on surgical robotic devices. And so it's a matter of juggling different messaging, not necessarily depending on the types of the audience, but just what you want to convey your company is about. So I think that it really gives you an opportunity to give a lot of different content, and that's what makes it variety is the spice of life, right? If you're a robotics company and 5 days a week you're just posting about robotics, it gets a little repetitive. But if it gives you the chance to sprinkle in, one day about this topic, another day about this topic, even another day about a vacation that you're going on with your family, so that people again are interested in following you and connecting with you because they're exposed to different types of content, I think that's the best route to go.
Yeah. And then, I mean, do you find CEOs are resistant or attracted more often than not to kind of creating a content plan for themselves and their company? Or do you think it's still kind of a generational thing that kind of...
It's actually a great question. I think my answer has changed over the last couple of years, because I've started to help or guide a bunch of friends and CEOs that I work with on sort of the LinkedIn route. And I would say a couple of years ago, everybody was like, "Oh, I'm not touching LinkedIn," and kind of the way I say, "Oh, I'm not touching Facebook." I mean, I'm still like that to an extent, but the people that are totally against it are still adamant. And then the guys that are that get it, like I can tell they get it instantly. They're like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm all over LinkedIn." And then the guys that are iffy about it will try it out and start to leverage it. And honestly, they become the worst because they become addicted. They like, as soon as they see the power of it, these guys are emailing me at like 6 o'clock on a Sunday morning. They're like, "Oh, I just saw this great article. Do you think I should post it?" I was like, "Yeah, go for it." But I think that people across the board are recognizing that when you're a publicly traded company, you want to use every avenue possible to communicate your story in a healthy way. as I said, road shows, conferences, digital. I spoke to somebody the other day. He said that for him, he throws in radio. I was like, radio, really? Are people still doing radio? He's like, absolutely. Every communication means possible is part of the secret sauce in telling the story.
Yeah. No, I think that's it's almost like you need a media arm essentially anymore. And this is almost becoming true even on a personal level. I feel like the part of your career development path is building audience, and people who have an audience are going to have more advantages in just getting hired. I mean, in general, because if you have an audience that follows you on a certain topic, then you have impact in that industry, which means that one, you have when you need a job, there's an audience there. Two, like you can bring more to a company. You actually bring more value to a company, whether it's in business development or in some other area or in recruiting. And so I feel like I'm seeing more and more folks across the board realizing that audience building is part of how you succeed in a career these days.
I think you hit it on the head. Meaning, John, you're effectively saying what Gary Vee had said. I don't care if you are a college student or a lawyer or an accountant. You're basically a media company. Mm-hmm. Regardless of what you do, you need to be selling yourself and telling the story of either who you are or why your company is better or what your product is about. You're a media company, regardless. Yeah. You might be a lawyer, but that's secondary to being a media company.
Right. And I think that's, when you put that, like nothing happens in a vacuum. So if you're a company and you're not doing this, then just realize that like your competitors are. And so they're the ones that are getting the attention. They're the ones who are being seen. They're the ones whose names are out there and who's CEO. So it's really kind of, if it's uncomfortable, I feel like it's kind of like one of those things where you kind of have to cowboy up,
right.
And find a way to do it, because if you're not, everyone else is.
And that's why LinkedIn may be great for some people, because I'm not comfortable. I mean, when I've had an amazing partner over the last 20 years, Shai Stern, and he's the salesman between the two of us. I'm the guy that at a conference, I'd rather be in the corner pretending to be on my phone than actually walk up to somebody and introduce myself. But with LinkedIn, where I can write something or provide something of value and then ask for something in return, that's different. So yeah, I mean, when you say cowboy up, that might be an alternative.
Yeah, no, I think that's it. Like, I feel like I know for me, I'm always like, social media is for people who look better than me. So, but I made a commitment to myself last year that I was going to start putting out more content, having more just good conversations. I was like, what is valuable, the kind of content that I consume is I want to have good conversations with smart people who are interested in the things that I'm interested in talking about. And when I kind of found that kind of pattern, it was much more useful for me. And I also found that you don't need a large audience. You just need the right audience.
Right.
And it's kind of like you have people who might have 1 million followers, but then you have this guy over here who has 250 family offices who are really paying attention to him. That is an extraordinarily valuable audience.
And it also snowballs, meaning if you're getting in front of those 250 people and they're resharing or they're commenting or whatnot, then the algorithm is getting you in front of their audience. Mm-hmm. And hopefully, as a family office, their audience consists of finance institution, family offices, decision makers, things like that. And that's the beauty of hopefully the whole system, mm-hmm. is that you're going to be exposed to their communities as well. Or if somebody posts something or reshares something in a LinkedIn group, right? You may have 1,000, 5,000 followers. The next guy might have 1,000, 5,000 followers, but then they share that in an e-com group or a biotech group that has 30, 40, 60,000 followers or connections. That's where a lot of good things can happen. So like you said, it doesn't necessarily matter. It could snowball and really get you exposure at any time.
Yeah. And I think that's, so I always categorize media in 3 big buckets. There's paid media, there's which is marketing that you're going to actually go out and like investor relations marketing. Then you have earned media, which is someone's going to cover you or feature you because they just love what you're doing. And then you have owned media, and that could be anything from building an email list of potential investors. But I think also social channels, it's owned media. It's like where you control the pace and conversation that you can put out there. And paid media and earned media should build owned media, because you're basically using those other sources to drive things into a channel where you can find the most interested people, the most engaged investors, potential partners, everybody, and have a conversation with them on an ongoing basis. And so it's almost like there's a just very broad funnel that should move down to that kind of owned media.
Yeah, because that's exactly what you're doing. In other words, it's funny because I was a bit of a loner when I was in law school 20 years ago. And in looking back, I think that the greatest asset that we could develop over the years, and I tell this to guys that are starting out, are the relationships that we have. And so when people are taking the time or hiring somebody to help them with marketing on LinkedIn or any social, you're building an asset. And that asset could be one of the most valuable assets that you have, because obviously it's yours, you own it, you follow it. And then, every 30 days you can export all those connections, and then study them, analyze them, target them, email them, et cetera. But that's an asset that you're building day in and day out.
Yeah. And then also, do you recommend to people that they actually go out and engage with the like, if you have a target list of people, then it's not just about posting comment, it's about engaging with whatever they're posting as well, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely. Because, I personally have noticed, when people continuously comment or like, or I'll be like, hey, this person has popped up, quite a few times. Either I'll thank them or I'll check out what they do and see if there's some synergy, and I will reach out, and vice versa. There are people that I've wanted to start a dialogue with, but I don't want to just email them cold or out of the blue and say, hey, I'd love to do business with you. I'll try to comment on their posts or thank them for taking the time to provide information about a conference or an industry update. Because at that point, when I do reach out or they do reach out to me, it's a bit of a warm relationship, a bit of a warm lead. I've seen them, I know who they are, they've checked me out. And so by the time it's a yes, we're like 30% into the relationship already. And it makes the remaining 70% a lot more comfortable. So yeah, I definitely recommend that.
Yeah, that seems much better. I have the same experience when, everyone who's on LinkedIn or any other platform knows you just get these cold, direct messages from people you have no idea, and they just go straight to pitching you stuff. And I mean, almost
I delete those immediately.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Like if I get a connection and then a sales pitch within the same 30 seconds, 10 seconds later, that's the lead.
Right. Exactly. And so, like, kind of to your point, then it is like, but when somebody has taken the time to comment on something that I've posted or liked it, and then they message me about having a conversation, I am invariably open to having the conversation. It seems
exactly.
And so, no, I think that's a really important kind of dynamic to recognize for folks. So you do directly, like, kind of consult and help companies then with LinkedIn, in addition to everything.
I've started to do that. Yeah, I've started to do that. I'm working with a bunch of CEOs and just guiding them. And I'm happy to speak to if anybody is looking to talk LinkedIn. Initially, I just categorized myself as a LinkedIn enthusiast, because it's something I'm really passionate about and I think it's really effective. But yeah, I've started to work with a bunch of CEOs, both private and public. And just always happy to help in any way I can.
Yeah. So anyone who wants to reach out, what would be the best way for them to contact you?
They can email me directly, Seth@thestocktransfer.com.
Okay, great. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk about this, Seth.
This has been great. It's a topic that's near and dear because, I know that it's effective, and, definitely if anybody's listening, connect to me on LinkedIn. And follow John, that's for sure.
Thanks, Seth. It's been great talking to you.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Take care.